Hello and welcome to Single Parent Success Stories. Today's guest is Anastasia Griffith, joining us from the UK. She is a single mom of one. She is an actress, an empowerment coach for mothers, and an EFT tapping practitioner. She works with overwhelmed and burned out moms to create more well-being in their homes, so together they can end the generational patterns that have held them back. Welcome, Anastasia. It is a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me here. Such a pleasure.
Yeah, so please share with us your story. How did you become a single mom, and what led you to become the coach that you are for conscious parenting?
Well, that is quite a story. It's quite a journey. So I was living as an actress, working as an actress in the US for 15 years when I sort of hit burnout myself and had a lot of health issues come up. I was around 35, 36. I'd had a lot of heartbreak. The acting world can be quite challenging. And I really was finding that my body was changing, and I received help for that. And one of the things that I was told, excuse me, is that I was going into what I would call premature perimenopause. And I didn't want to hear this at all, because I'd wanted to be a mum since I was 21 years old. Acting was a massive dream of mine, but I think being a parent was even bigger. And it was just such a raison d'etre that I had been born with. And so to hear this while I was single and had just gone through a very nasty breakup was quite a challenge. And I really didn't want to believe it. So I went on a healing journey that culminated in me healing my gut, cleansing my system, understanding my adrenals, and ultimately sitting on a yoga mat on my birthday. I think it was my 36th birthday. And this yoga teacher took me through a journey of like really visioning what I wanted in my life. And on that yoga mat, I envisaged this little boy. And he was a mixed race little boy. He was, it looked like he was part Asian. Excuse me, I've got a little frog in my throat. He was part Asian, which was funny because I had dated a part Asian guy in the past, but wasn't in that moment. And I really just had this explosion of love that went through my system. And in that moment, I expanded. I touched into the feeling sensations of what I wanted my life to be about. And I had such a clear vision of who this child was that it changed me. And I went off that night to go out for my birthday celebration and realized, like, this is all good and well, you know, going out with my friends, but what I really want is this child. And I'd done enough around manifestation and spirituality to know that God speaks the language of vibration. He doesn't speak English or French or Polish or anything else. And so I just really kept focusing on, this is how I want to feel. And slowly my body felt better. And I reconnected with someone who was a very old friend, someone that I'd known through a friend. And we had this moment in time that was lovely. And both of us realized very quickly that we were not meant to be in a relationship with each other. But the next morning, I realized that something was happening in my body. And it was like this lighting up. It was this sensuality that I had never felt when in union with a man. But I was having this sensual moment, and it really felt like this child was landing in my body. It really connected me to God and the universe and to creation itself. And it sounds so dramatic, but I knew in that moment that I had conceived a child, and I couldn't stop smiling. But I told no one. And then 5 weeks later, I did a test, and there it was. I was pregnant. And look, that's a very beautiful story that takes me into a very, very real situation that has had its ups and downs and its challenges along the way, and no question. And I guess it was some of those challenges that brought me to parent coaching. As a single mom, I was working on a TV show in Cape Town. My son by that time was 2.5, almost 3. His needs were changing. He'd never known me as a working parent because I hadn't booked a TV show really until that point. And this one took us all over the world. And doing that as a single parent without any, like, I didn't have a live-in nanny. I couldn't afford that at the time. So I didn't have my partner. I didn't have a partner, and his dad was in Korea working himself. So it was doing that on my own, and his needs changing, where this little angel baby turned into quite an authoritarian, a very authoritative little 2-year-old who knew exactly what he wanted and was so smart with emotions that he was beginning to understand cause and effect. And he realized, if I bite you, I get this. And I like this reaction. Even if you're cross with me, this is fun. And I was so tapped out, and I was beginning to hit that burnout stage again. And I recognized it, and I just leant back and realized, you know what, I've made a conscious decision to be a conscious parent, but yet the triggers in me are stronger than any conscious choice that I've made. And I was beginning to want to retaliate, to grab him, to berate him, to shame him, so that this behavior would just stop, so I could be more comfortable. And it was in that moment I realized, look, I actually need help to stop this subconscious reaction, to understand it better, and also to handle the fear that was coming up in me that I was raising some kind of sociopath. I really was like, no child should behave this way if they're healthy. So it was that. And just to kind of give a little understanding, I had studied psychology the whole way through being an actress. It's always, I think that's what I should have done at university, probably. And so I was doing foundations in psychology. I was reading endless, what I would now call self-development books. Back then it was called self-help, which is not a great term. And it really was my passion outside of acting. So this coaching piece has been the marriage of 2 of my greatest callings, or even 3, because there's the mothering piece, there's the understanding humanity through psychology piece, and then there's the understanding humanity through the acting piece. And so it just all kind of came together when he was around 2.5 years old, and here I am today, still living it and breathing it in my own life and with my clients.
That's incredible. And I love it how beautifully you talk about it, and how your son came to be, and the fact that you saw him in the vision and then he came to life.
This child wanted to be here. I really have felt this like strong life force from him, and that he chose us, and he was like, I'm coming now, right now. You guys will never figure this out if I don't just come. So that's sort of how I think we both understand it.
Wow. So what were some of the things, what were some of the challenges you faced being a single mom? I know you mentioned, taking the show and taking your child with you. What were some of the things you were faced with?
Yeah, there are a lot. And I think we have to be careful not to whitewash and pave over what it is to be a single parent, and to allow people to know that there is a amazing repayment that you get from being a single parent in terms of the relationship you get to build with your child. So the challenges for me have been certainly financial. I knew that I wanted to be present with my child. I knew that if I'm only going to get the chance to have one kid, especially, that I get to truly enjoy it and go through the stages with him. And that was just a value that was very clear to me from the beginning. So I took the first year off. So I was with him 100% in that year. I didn't audition. I didn't do anything. I'd sold a home in California so I could do that. However, that year cost money, right? And so I feel like somewhat I've been scrambling to catch up with that year since then. And I mean, I think the practical sort of value-led system of how do I get to be a conscious parent and be with my kid and pay for him and pay for a home and not end up being a stressed, terrified parent because I don't have an income. And I've definitely been riding that wave very much for the last 7 years. And I also believe after that job that I did, which was probably the best job of my life, best part of my life, after that job, I think I closed down the pathway into acting a little bit because it was so challenging that I stepped away from what has always been my other dream. And so there's been a lot of heartache around that and fear. Will I ever get back to it? And then on really practical terms, I'm one of the only parents I know who never gets a day or a night off. Most of the single parents I know, there are a couple who are in my situation, who live in different countries to the other parent, or that the other parent has completely disappeared, which thankfully is not my situation. You literally never get a day, a night to yourself. And I can count on two hands the numbers of evenings I've had to myself since my son arrived. Part of that is choice, knowing that I am his only sort of safe place. And part of that is just practicality. I can't afford to pay someone to come and stay with him for a weekend at the moment. So if I'm going to do that, that's asking friends and family who also have children to do that for me. And that feels like a really big ask. And that's something I'm getting better at, is to say, I need support and can you step in? So it's easier to do that with some people rather than others. So I'd say those things. And then just with that in mind, I think the biggest challenge of being a single parent is when you are tired, burnt out, when your nervous system is at its capacity and normal family things kick off, or your child has normal responses, age-appropriate pushback, sometimes not being able to step away and say, can you take it this time because I am tapped out, has meant that I have to get even better at regulating my nervous system, lean in even harder to my own value system of what is most important to me in this moment, and actually biohack my own nervous system so that I can come back online even when what I want to do is run away and hide or scream or stamp my own feet, So I've had to get very good at self-regulation. And I think what's happened is I'm very good at doing it with my own child, and I'm maybe less good at doing it, therefore, with some of the other people in my life. Like my mum sometimes gets the hard end of the stick because I just don't have the capacity to anchor myself with everyone else when I do it 100% with him.
This is so true. And especially when you have no support and tapping out. And what kind of habits do you have that allow you to have that capacity to handle those situations? Do you have any favorite ones that sustain
I absolutely do. If it weren't for EFT tapping, my son would not be the balanced child that he is today. Excuse me. If it weren't for emotional freedom technique, which is something I then went on to learn how to teach other parents, I'm not sure I would have coped. And I can talk in a minute a little bit about what that is, but there are other things too. And one of the things I lead parents through is getting really clear on their value system. So I really see it as a top-down and bottom-up approach. We have to deal with things from the top down in terms of what choices am I mentally making? How do I want to align my life so that when I am in a sticky situation, I can lean into what is my why here? Why is it important to me that I don't scream and yell and give my son time out and put him in his room right now? Really knowing why that is. So for me, that was learning. It was learning the repercussions of isolating them in difficult moments, the long-term repercussions of our relationship if I'm not capable of listening to his perspective, or if I'm shaming his emotions. So there was that top-down piece of really understanding and making a logical choice and lining that up with my own values. And then there was the bottom-up approach, which is really a physiological response, like I just said, that we're not always in control of. It's subconscious. 97% of our behavior comes from our subconscious mind, which is created between the ages of 0 and 7. So I went back and I looked at what belief systems did I create at that time? What beliefs do I have about myself, about bad behavior, and I do that in inverted commas because I don't believe that there is such a thing as bad behavior, but bad behavior in children. I had to unravel all of this learning that I had subconsciously assimilated with around what it is to be a child and what it is to be an adult and how we get to move together. But also I had to do a lot of work on my nervous system. And I actually suffered from anxiety, quite severe anxiety, for about 3 years, a couple of years ago. And so really realizing that this is stress and trauma literally coming up in my physiology. So it required me to lean in and to learn. And that's where I've used a lot of somatic experience tools, just practicing and building my capacity to be with the discomfort that's happening in my body and not letting it take me in what I would call a limbic spiral. So you're in a stress response and you just keep going and going and going and believing the thoughts. You have to snap it. You have to snap the cycle as it goes. So there have been some somatic experience tools that allow me to really embody, express, move through, voice some of this very old stagnant emotion, fear, and EFT tapping, which I can go into more if you're interested.
Yes, I think EFT tapping is amazing, and it's some awesome regulation system to allow for the trapped emotions and to realize that they are not true. I think it's an amazing way to do so. Yeah, please share more.
Yeah, so tapping for me, I think it started with that. It started with, I've got so much in my body, I don't know what to do with this. And historically I would numb out. So in my 20s and 30s, I drank a lot, I partied a lot, I did everything I could not to feel what was happening. It led me to binge eating and chronic fasting, this strange relationship with food and consuming things. And so I was aware enough that I was like, I have a pattern of avoiding. And so really EFT came into my life before Arlo arrived, before my son arrived, to help me find a safe way to feel everything that was happening. Because one of the things EFT does that a lot of people don't talk about is it actually distracts our brain, gives us something to physically do for all the doers out there who need to be doing something, while we create space to actually feel. And the reality is, if we cannot feel, those emotions are going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And eventually they are going to start living in your body. They will become manifest, which is what happened, I think, to me. Or they will send your hormones out of whack. They'll send your adrenals out of whack. You will get physical ramifications because your body, your soul is screaming at you to acknowledge and process these experiences that have built up. And that can be really scary. So EFT is cool in that you're not just being asked to sit there and meditate and allow it to be, you're giving yourself a thing to do that feels constructive. And so for me, as a real doer, a very alpha person, that was really helpful. Also, the somatic experience, like I just said, actually allowing yourself to experience the emotion allows the emotion to move through. So the reality is any emotion will pass through your body within 90 seconds if you fully allow it to move. But if you're going to bring in story or blame or judgment or shame around the anger, the sadness, the grief, even the joy, lots of people shut down joy for that reason, then you're going to have it stuck in your body, and it's going to be there as an imprint that will get triggered and triggered and triggered, which is where this word that we use way too much now really comes in. So with EFT, you can go into the somatic body experience, the sensations in the body that can then be a gateway into memory, into past experience that has not been fully processed. And we now understand that we can process everything on that somatic level. We don't need to go to a psychologist. Some do, obviously, there is definitely space for that. But for me, I'd done talk therapy. And talk therapy took me more into that pattern. It deeply embedded a way of thinking that EFT has managed to free me from, which so it has allowed me to go into the experience without getting deeply embedded in the story, but to process those feelings, sensations, emotions in the body, and literally has allowed me to get lighter physically. It's healed, in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, but it seems to have healed gut issues. It seems to have balanced my energies, my hormones, and certainly in terms of mood and regulation, it has just unfilled my cup, right? It's just taken out this historical heaviness or stress that will get topped up and create tension in the present moment, whether it's with your kids or your relationships. So that's what it's done for me. And it really works on the meridian system in the body. So it's quite similar to acupuncture. The understanding is we have these energy channels that end in certain points. And the energy is, you know, just this energy and motion can get trapped. And when you clear out those energy centers or open them up, you can literally feel things, sensations, energy moving around and through your body. So that's what it's been for me. And every night I sit in a bath because that's my happy place. And I will do up to an hour of tapping because I just feel cleansed at the end of a day, especially when my son was very young.
Yeah, yes, I love it. And I totally agree with the emotions being trapped in a body. All emotions are good, especially the negative ones. The purpose of them is to send a signal to tell us that something is wrong. Oftentimes we don't listen to that. We let it slide and then it gets lodged into our body. And I use something called timeline therapy to release those emotions by going back and releasing the original gestalt when it first happened, whether it's anger, sadness, grief, and so on. And you also feel that release and you feel like living your life from a clean slate,
100%.
reimagining how it is and not being stuck, because you're so right. Once they're dislodged in a body, they can manifest in a disease if you don't take care of it.
And they can manifest in the disease of relationships even more easily. Infesting, you know, teaching people, adult parents who come to me for the first time, that what they are responding to in their partner, their friend, their colleague is actually based in something that happened to them as a child is such a breakthrough moment where they get to realize that they can take their power back, that actually by going into that moment in the past and in quite a simple way, healing it or moving through it or acknowledging it, or even just building awareness that that's what's being triggered, can completely transform their energy on a day-to-day level. They're no longer trapped in this person said this to me and I've done that, and, you know, blame and shame and these disgruntled kind of relationships that they have with other people. And I think so that is one of the main things that I go through at the beginning of our sessions with people is we don't need to go into the story of like what your parents did and how your parents were, and just mildly becoming aware of the patterns that you observed and learned and absorbed. What happened at school when you were bullied, what happened in your 20s when you were abused, or whatever it was. There's space for acknowledging all of that. And the more we get to acknowledge it and hold it and nurture the part of ourselves that was wounded at that time, which I call inner child work, but really this is inner teenager, in a 20-year-old, you know, it goes on. But acknowledging and showing up for that part of yourself, meeting the need that that part of you needed at that time, can free you to have the relationships with anyone that you want in the present moment.
Yeah. So knowing everything that you know now, what kind of advice would you give to that person who was having that vision of the child?
Yeah. Firstly, do it. It was the best decision of my life. And to me, it wasn't even a decision. When I knew I was pregnant, it was a no-brainer. It was 100% a gift from God. But I think I'm quite unique in that. I think my longing to be a parent was so strong from such a young age that I was gifted that certainty. But I would love to encourage people who are on the brink of this decision or facing it right now, that you have what it takes to be everything that that child needs. Yes, challenges come, you know, explaining to them the dynamic that other people have two parents around and you only have one does come with ramifications for that child. And we all face adversity in our lives. The tool, the gift that we get to give our children who are children of single parents is to learn how to handle that adversity, not personalize it, not make it mean something about themselves, but to give them the skills to manage all of the feelings and experiences that come up through that. So not to villainize the experience of being a child with a single parent, and not to villainize the experience of being the single parent, because for me, the positive has been that my relationship with my child is so mutually respectful that, yes, he's 6 and he's learning what it is not to be the center of the universe slowly as his life goes on. And he is so emotionally intelligent because of the conversations and the time that I've been able to spend on that with him, that he's quite a unique little boy. And I can see that, yes, there are challenges for him, but there are also real benefits. So just firstly, I would say, go for it. Don't fear or make being a single parent wrong. The other thing I would say is be really cautious of listening to people who say, oh, it must be so hard, because the more you hear that, the harder it's going to be. And I have witnessed this in myself 100%, because I didn't find it hard. I did not find it hard. Admittedly, at the beginning, I had more money. Like I said, I'd sold a property. I felt more supported financially. As it went on and the finances became more tricky for me, it definitely got harder. But I wonder how much of that is because I've internalized this story that is everywhere, that single parenting is so hard. And the more we believe something, the more it becomes true, the more it's in our somatic experience, it's in our somatic body. And like I said, the universe speaks vibration, not English. So if you're going to live in this vibration of struggle, then that's exactly what you're going to see more of. So noticing the positives of what it is to be a single parent, you know, when you've got a brand new baby and you don't have to take care of anyone else, that is a positive. It was a positive for me. I didn't have to make space for a partner. I could fully focus on this small baby, and that was a beautiful experience. So I just invite you to have a gratitude practice of how lucky you are that this child has shown up. Really focus on the benefits and the life-changing yes that has come with it. And then I'd say the third thing is looking after your nervous system, having tools and building skills that you can use to show up for yourself and resource yourself, because let me tell you something, no one else is going to do it. No one else is going to do it. Whether you're a single parent or a parent with a partner, no one else is going to do that work for you. And yet, how your nervous system blueprint becomes your child's nervous system blueprint, because they use us to co-regulate, certainly for the first 7 to 12 years of their lives. Many people say until they're 25. So the more we can understand our nervous system and do this work, give ourselves these skills and tools, the more pleasurable this experience can be, and the better outcome for your child.
Yes, you're so right.
Mm-hmm.
That work is important, the self-regulation, and nobody is coming to save you. You gotta take care of those things yourself. You cannot outsource it. What kind of, what would you say is your personal superpower or your number one gift?
It's funny because I think with my son, it's different from with anyone else. And I think the reason for that is I've really let him in. I would almost say with everyone else in the world, like I'm courageous. I go for it. One of my good friends has named me the machine, because when I put my mind at something, I go for it. So that would be outside of my family. But with my son, it is my ability to take responsibility for my own shit. It's my ability to, like I said, take care of myself, know when I'm not behaving the way that I want to, and taking responsibility for it and modeling for him that none of us are perfect. We all make mistakes and we get to take responsibility for that and make it right. So I would say that, but that really is attached to the love, the depth of love that I can tap into for that child. And he really has taught me that I'm capable of that, because I really don't think that I was before he arrived.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. What kind of advice would you give to single parents who are just starting on their journey of single parenting?
I would definitely say reach out for help. And I mean that in the right way, because I think as you're pregnant and you're going through, I actually think that that pregnancy process was maybe the hardest part for me. I struggled with even just the sensation that I was carrying someone else's DNA who I hadn't specifically chosen. And until you meet the child, it's still about the two of you. Once the child arrives, then it becomes all of that attention and love gets poured into the kid, and it becomes about this being outside of yourself. But I think that there is so much that can be done. I know there is so much that can be done in terms of co-parenting, in terms of getting your system prepared for what's about to come. And by that, I mean our nervous system, to make conscious choices around the value system, that these needs can be met by asking for help. And I would say that's from a therapist who you really align with their outlook, their value system, or from someone like me who is a coach who specifically is working with, let's work with these systems that will come up and you will hit up against, whether that's children should be seen and not heard, whether that's this is going to be hard and I'm not capable of it, whether that's I'm not enough, like whatever is coming up subconsciously, or you're becoming a little bit aware of in terms of fear, knowing that that's only going to get stronger. And there's so much you can do to pave the way so that your foundations are strong when that child arrives.
Thank you. Thank you. If people would like to learn more about you or connect with you further, where would they go?
I'm pretty present on Instagram. My handle is the Anastasia Griffith. So I try and put stuff out there at least, once or twice a week. I do free webinars and workshops that I advertise on there. I have a website, which is theempoweredparentingcompany.com. And again, through that, you can link into all my free workshops. I work as a one-on-one coach. I have group coaching. So I really am trying to be available to people at all different pay levels, so that this is not just for high ticket clients. I want to be available, and I want single parents to know that they can always reach out to me, and I will always give discounts. Sometimes I can do scholarships for my groups, so that single parents specifically get to have the support that I know I wish I'd had right at the beginning. So I'd say both of those two places. My company is the Empowered Parenting Company, and on Instagram, I'm the Anastasia Griffith.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on, sharing your story, your wisdom, and your tools. It was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.